So here we are with the Alienware X17 R2 review. Now, if you've been following the channel and you like Alienware, then you'll know that we absolutely loved the Alienware X17 R1. It came out of nowhere last year and it became quickly one of our favourite laptops of 2021 and definitely our favourite 17-inch gaming laptop. So with Intel releasing their exciting 12th gen CPU and Nvidia releasing the TI range of 3000 series of cards, it seemed only right that Dell would relaunch their X17 as the R2 with these upgraded components. Now externally, this laptop is very similar to last year's model. So what I will do is put timestamps down below in the description. So if you want to skip ahead because you're familiar with the X17, feel free to do that. Now before I actually start reviewing this laptop, what I want to quickly do is talk about the options that are available for this X17 R2. Now I have configured here the i9 with the 3080 Ti, 32GB of DDR5 and the 1080p panel. Now, in the UK, this will cost you a whopping £3,600, which seems like an incredible amount for a laptop. And I was shocked when I first saw that this was launching at that price. But when I looked around at the competitors, in the UK in particular, I found that this was actually reasonably priced compared to all their other alternatives out there, like the Razer Blade or the MSI G76, both of which are actually more expensive than this model. And I also want to point out as well that as of the moment, on this laptop, in the UK in particular, we've only got a choice of a 3060 or the 3080 Ti. Now that's really quite frustrating. I would have liked to have got a 3070 Ti as well to see how well that performed. So as it is, I've just got the 3080 Ti versions in, but I have got the i9 and I've also got the i7. Now by the time you're watching this review as well, Justin from Justin Tech Tips and myself will have done a video benchmarking the i7 against the i9. So I will put a link down below in case you want to watch that to see how well each of these CPUs perform. And also talking about the options, my biggest gripe with this laptop this year is the fact that on release, all we're getting an option of is two 1080p screens. The base 165Hz panel and the upgraded 360Hz panel. Now I've got both of those panels in and I will put both of those in this review so you can see the differences between the two. But at the moment, there's no 4K 120Hz option. That will be added later. Now my biggest gripe with this is that last year when they released the X17, I was crying out for the QHD 240Hz panel that some of the competitors were getting. And again, we're now in 2022 and still all these competitors are getting the QHD with 240Hz as a premium upgrade. And in my opinion, the QHD 240Hz panel is the best option to put with a 17-inch laptop with these specs. Now, if you're a content creator, the 4K 120Hz is a great option because you can use it for gaming and content creation. It's great for that. But pushing games at 4K, even with this modern technology, is very difficult. And most of us would prefer higher frames per second with a slightly lower resolution than trying to game at 4K. So that QHD hits an absolute sweet spot. And I'm hoping that one day Dell will start listening to its fan base and its customers and start putting in the things that we are genuinely asking for. So with that out of the way, let's get on with this review. And in case you haven't seen the X17 R1 and this is completely new to you, this X17 R2 chassis is the same and we've got the beautiful lunar light outer and dark side of the moon inner, providing with a great contrast between the sort of the black and the sort of just slightly off-white colour scheme of this laptop. And this is something that I absolutely loved when they released because you get the great lunar light finish on the outside of the laptop, but when you open it up and you're using the keyboard, in my opinion, the keys in the black is better because it contrasts well with the RGB. And if you've ever had the lunar light keyboard, it's particularly when you set certain colours on the RGB keyboard, you'll notice that it doesn't actually show that well on the keyboard, whereas the colours really pop on this dark side keyboard. Now I know some people like the fact that you used to get a choice between the lunar light and the dark side, whereas now you're stuck with just this one colour choice. But in my opinion, this is quite a good compromise. I also want to say, having used my Area 51M for over a year now and an X17 for nearly a year, this finish holds up really well. Something that didn't with the first revision of the lunar light, it did discolour, but with this new high endurance coating that they provide, it actually holds up really well to everyday use. Now don't get me wrong, this dark side of the moon will sometimes get finger oils and greases, but you can clean that off and it certainly doesn't pick up fingerprints as much as an XPS or a Razer Blade. So it is a great compromise in my opinion. Now picking up this laptop, you can feel how tanky it is. It's not that heavy for a 17-inch laptop, but it has got some heft. But it just feels incredibly solid. There's no creaks, there's no sort of give when you're sort of like moving it and chucking it around. And it does feel like this is a laptop that's going to last you, especially if you've ever picked up some of the cheaper sort of plastic laptops that sort of, there's a lot of flex and give. This doesn't give you any of that sort of feeling. It feels really premium. that's something I've always liked about this Alienware range. They feel really solid. Now the hinge of this laptop is incredibly solid. It moves smoothly and it can be opened with one hand. It feels really well engineered and there's no wobble when you're using this on your lap or typing heavily on this laptop. And you've got the beautiful RGB alien head on the lid. And we've got that beautiful mini LED Tron ring on the rear, which just instantly gives it away as an Alienware. Now this is something that they added to the X17, is this mini LED Tron ring, which is much more vibrant with much more colours than you had on the previous Alienware laptops. And it does look absolutely beautiful, something I've always loved about this new Epic design. We also get a per key RGB keyboard and the usual lit alien head. Now the lovely thing about this alien head is it powers up and gives you a colour depending on whether you're on battery as a yellow or mains as blue. And if the battery is charging, it alternates between the yellow and blue. It's really lovely. So if you ever accidentally knock your power adapter out the side of your laptop and you haven't realised, you can instantly see by this status on the alien head. Now the power adapter plugs into the left side of the machine and we have a headset jack on the right. All the other ports are on the rear of this laptop. Now this is great because it does keep the clutter to a minimum when you've got everything plugged in the back of your laptop. You have the cables coming out the back and off the edge of your desk. That is lovely for keeping your laptop looking clean, especially if you've got it as a desktop replacement, you've got it sitting beside your monitor. But it's difficult if you're a person like myself that's constantly plugging things in and out of your laptop, because you will find that you're constantly having to reach around or spin your laptop trying around to try and find the ports. Whereas on the older Alienwares, having some of the regularly used ports at the side is incredibly useful, especially a USB or a memory card, because these are the things that you're plugging in and out regularly, and it's nice to be able to easily access them. But I can understand why Alienware have done this. It has kept it clean. But if I was designing this laptop, I would have moved the power jack to the rear and popped a USB on the side instead. But hey, I don't work for Alienware. Now, even if this laptop is turned off, once you open the laptop, it will instantly start booting up, and this is a lovely feature. Especially for myself, that's very lazy, can't be bothered to open it and actually press the power button. But if you don't like that, you can go into the BIOS and actually turn that feature off. But personally, with the fact that we've got the instant turning on, opening on, and also Windows Hello sort of built in, which is facial recognition, a lazy person like myself, I can open my laptop and log straight in without having to do anything. Absolutely perfect in my opinion. Now the trackpad is good and it is responsive, but in my opinion, it is very small, especially when you look at some of its competitors. But in all honesty, if it's a gaming laptop, how often are you genuinely using your trackpad? And in a pinch, it's absolutely fine. And most of the time, you'll probably be using your gaming mouse. And as we move up to the keyboard, we've got a choice. We've either got the Alienware standard chiclet keyboard with the per key RGB backlighting, or we've got the Cherry MX mechanical keyboard, which is the model I've got here. Now, I have got both of these models in, and I will be doing a very quick side-by-side test of both the keyboards so that you can see the difference, and I will pop a link to that up above. But if there's no charge between these two, I reckon the majority of people get the mechanical keyboard. It is a fantastic keyboard to type on, and I've really enjoyed my time using this keyboard. But it is like a Cherry MX blue switch, so there is some noise to this keyboard. Now, as per last year, the layout is the same, and as amazing it is to type on, there are a couple of drawbacks. Firstly, the secondary symbols are not backlit. Now that's a real shame. And I know Razer have been doing this for years in the European market, and now since last year, Alienware have started doing this. And when you're using your keyboard in the dark, it's the secondary functions you usually need lit because you don't know where the brightness or the speakers often are because they're never always in the same place from laptop to laptop. So it's a real shame that Alienware used to do this and have suddenly stopped with the release of this X series of laptops. Also, with regards to the layout of this keyboard, with this X17 and X15 range, we've now got a row of multimedia keys down the side. That can be quite useful, but the way that they've actually achieved this is also by crushing the cursor keys into the keyboard. Now, you get used to it, don't get me wrong, but I have mishit when I'm trying to hit either the shift or the control. I've actually hit a cursor key because it's pushed into where you'd expect those keys to be. Now again, the previous M17 and M15 series of keyboards were absolutely perfect. I don't know why Dell thought there was a need to change it. But once you do get used to it, it's still a fantastic keyboard to use and to type on, and in my opinion, pretty much the best keyboard in the gaming laptop market. Now the speakers are very average for a laptop at this price point, and if you've ever used a MacBook Pro 16 or even the new 14-inch, you'll be incredibly disappointed when you hear the speakers on this laptop. But this isn't just a fault of Dell, this is most Windows gaming laptops, and I don't understand why they feel that there's no need to put decent speakers in a gaming machine like this. If you're spending £3,600, I want a decent all-round package. And although I will probably be using a headset, sometimes it's nice to be able to just use your inbuilt speakers to listen to a podcast or play some games on the go. So I really wish Dell would spend the extra $5, $10 dollars or pounds and putting a decent set of speakers into these laptops. And above the keyboard, you can see we've got plenty of air intakes. Now with this laptop, you've got air intakes in the top and underneath. Now that will mean that you get great airflow through this laptop with these vents pushing all the hot air out the back, but it also means that you won't want to be closing the lid and actually gaming on this machine. You're going to want to keep the lid open because it does need this area for airflow. Now moving up to the screen, now on launch of this X17 R2, there's only two panels available. Both are 1080p, one's a 165Hz panel and the other's a 360Hz panel. Now we've had both panels into the studio, they're both 350 nits brightness, and although the 165Hz panel is still a great panel, the 360Hz panel is much faster as well as being much more color accurate. So if you don't mind spending an extra 150, 200 sort of dollars or pounds, I would definitely recommend the 360Hz upgrade. Even though you'll probably never hit the 360Hz, it's just a more responsive panel. Moving to the top of the screen, we've got the webcam. It's very average and it looks and sounds like this. This is a test of the webcam and the microphones on the Alienware X17 R2. And as I mentioned earlier, we've also got Windows Hello. It's incredibly accurate and incredibly quick to log you in. And Windows Hello facial recognition is my favourite way of logging into Windows. Now opening up to get to the internal of this laptop is very easy. Power the laptop off, turn it over, you unscrew a few Phillips screws, a couple of which slightly lift the panel away from the actual laptop and use a plastic sort of pry tool to just pop the whole panel off. Now this gives you access to the two DDR5 RAM chips, which are user upgradable, and also two PCIe Gen 4 SSD slots. Now unfortunately the Wi-Fi is soldered on and the motherboard is inverted, so if you do want to actually repaste your motherboard, you're going to have to strip the whole machine down. Now that is a shame. And we can also see the four fans of this Alienware X17 series, which provide incredible cooling for this laptop, along with the Element 31 and the vapor chamber cooler. So with all that out of the way, let's get down to the nitty gritty and see how this performs. Well, this is our first Intel 12th Gen CPU. We've been really excited about getting it in. And without even getting any further into this performance section, I can tell you now, it is an incredible CPU. But it does come at a cost. These are very expensive laptops and more expensive than the 11th Gen X17s that this is replacing. But these 12th gens give us a massive generational leap over those previous 11th gens. We've got 6 performance cores with hyperthreading, plus 8 efficiency cores, which give us incredible performance on any CPU tasks. The CPU score is through the roof. It's the fastest CPU score I've seen on any laptop processor, much faster than even the Apple Silicon M1 chips. And the multi-core scores are also incredible. Now it does come at a cost. When I'm running this at full performance, we're running at well over 130 watts. It will boost up to about 150 and then quickly throttle back to 130, which is what this sort of chassis can sustain. But this is giving us multi-core performance approximately 40% faster than the 11th gen CPUs that this is replacing. But with regards to the actual GPU in this, with the Nvidia 3080 Ti, this was a bit of a disappointment. Now, the 3080 Ti is a 170 watt TGP card, so actually 10 watts more than last year's 3080. It's got more CUDA cores on board, so I was expecting a pretty good increase in performance. But from my testing so far, we were talking a maximum of about 10%. And considering how much extra this laptop cost over last year's model, I think that's a real disappointment. But the good news is, if you haven't been looking at the X17 R1s and you're just coming straight in afresh with this X17 R2, the gaming performance is absolutely solid. With this 1080p panel, it's going to cut through anything you throw at it. In my testing of Warzone and Apex and my usual games that I benchmark on these machines, it flew through all those tests with flying colours. And the best thing is, if you're in balance mode, it's not really that noisy. This laptop obviously comes with multiple Alienware profiles, from balanced right way through to full fan speed, which gives you a range of decibels between 48 and 52 decibels. And when gaming on balanced mode, you lose a few percent of performance, but the 48 decibels is a very comfortable fan noise. But if you really want that max performance and you've got your headset on, crank it up to full performance or using the function and F1 for the performance mode, you'll hit that 52 decibels and it will run with 130 watts on the CPU and flat out on that 175 watt 3080 Ti GPU for just incredible performance. Now I'm going to be doing a future video where I'm going to test this with my 38 and 34-inch ultra-wides to really push it, because 1080p is not really pushing this GPU. So make sure you're subscribed if you want to see that video. That will be coming soon. And whilst we're also on the subject of this performance and the gaming performance of this machine, another thing I've loved about this Alienware X series, and is the same with this X17 R2, is because it's got this 4 fans pumping the hot air out the side and out the back, it keeps the keyboard and palm rest really cool. And if you're gaming and you're actually gaming on this machine, which is probably what you're going to be buying this for, otherwise you might as well get a desktop, There's nothing worse than having a hot keyboard or palm rest when you're leaving your hand on there. There's nothing worse than sweaty palms. So this is something I loved about last year's model, and it's stayed the same with this year's model, and it's something I really do appreciate. Now, if you're spending the extra to get this 12th gen CPU in this X17 R2, you're probably going to be doing more than just gaming with this machine. Because if you're just gaming, probably the 11th gen will be more than enough. The good news is, when you pull that power cord and you're using this CPU on battery, you're still getting great performance. You put it on the high performance mode within the Windows power plan, and you're getting not quite full performance, as you'd expect, because this CPU can draw up to 130 watts, but it's got more performance than last year's model on full mains. So that shows you how well these 12th gen CPUs are doing. Now, as usual, your 3080 Ti will never be able to run at full performance on battery. Running Geekbench 5 OpenCL on battery, our scores drop by over half, which is expected, because if you were running a 175 watt GPU on battery, you'd kill your battery in probably 20 minutes. The battery life on this machine is as pretty much we'd expect with an Alienware laptop. Battery's never the priority. Now, testing this on balanced mode with RGB on at 200 nits of brightness, I tested both the screens, so the 165Hz and the 360Hz. I was firstly surprised to find that both of those screens, battery lasted exactly the same. Now, I was expecting the 360Hz band to have much worse battery, but thanks to both these having advanced Optimus, they both lasted 4 hours and 50 minutes. Now, that's not incredible, and you probably could tweak that a bit more by changing it down to 60Hz and turning off all the RGB, but for just straight out of the box balanced settings, I'm actually quite impressed with that. I also want to mention that these machines can utilize USB-C charging via a USB-C power pack or a monitor or dock, and that can be incredibly handy. So if you are taking this laptop out to work, say, and you don't want to take your big power brick, then you can certainly just plug in your USB-C and it'll give you more than enough power to work for a day. You won't be gaming full power, but you'll certainly have no problems working on this. And talking of power pack, that is another massive change on this year's model. If you remember last year's Alienware X17 R1 with the 3080, we got that ridiculous 330 watt power brick from 10 years ago. That thing was literally built after the size of a house brick. But if you bought the 3060 or 3070 model, you got a much nicer, slimmer, redesigned 240 watt. Well, the good news is this year Dell have finally redesigned the 330 power brick. We actually get a nice, compact and lighter 330 watt power brick now. So if you're spending that money to get these machines, you're now getting a decent package with the 3080 Ti's. So well done, Dell, for that. Took you long enough. Right, so on to the conclusion. Now, last year, Dell took us by surprise with the X17. They released it not long after the M17 R4, which was an already very successful laptop. And the X17 came out and took it by storm, and we absolutely loved it. Now, this year, Dell have built upon that success with this X17 R2. Now, they haven't made many changes. Speakers are the same. Screen options are so far the same. All we've done is we basically added in 12th gen CPUs, DDR5s, and the option for a 3070 or 3080 Ti graphics card. Now, if the prices were the same as last year's, it would be an absolute no-brainer. I'd say go out and buy the X17 R2. But the prices of this year's, and it's not just Alienware, it's pretty much all brands with the global supply and all the other problems that we're having at the moment. But the price of these laptops this year is incredibly expensive. Now, $3,600 for this i9 with 3080 Ti, that's probably going to be out of a lot of people's budget. So, in my opinion, if you're just after a gaming laptop, I would suggest you look for a bargain on an X17 R1. You're getting the same chassis. You're also getting an RGB trackpad if you buy the actual 3080 model, something that Dell have actually taken away this year for some unknown reason. And you're getting pretty much the same performance in a gaming load. The only way you're going to see a real benefit with the X17 R2 is if you're using this machine for work as well as play. And in that case, you may be able to justify the extra for this amazing 12th gen CPU. So that leads me to my two biggest gripes about this X17 R2 is first one I've just mentioned, they've taken away the RGB trackpad. Why, Dell? Everyone loved that feature. This is a really expensive laptop. Why would you take away an RGB trackpad that your customers loved? No idea. And secondly, where is the QHD option? This is 2022. All of your competitors have it. Dell, why aren't you providing it? So that's my two biggest gripes with this laptop, and it's something that Dell could have easily addressed. So those are my thoughts on this Alienware X17 R2. We will be coming out with a deep dive very soon when we're going to have a much deeper look at this i9 and also be putting this i9 against the i7 model that we've also got in, just to see how much difference and whether it's worth that price for the i9. And also, I'd love to hear your opinions. What do you think about this X17 R2? Do you think it's worth the massive price increase of laptops of this year? Or do you think you should buy the X17 R1? And lastly, thank you for watching.